Good Monday morning. Today we are going to look at some GraphQL basics. I am MPJ and you are watching Fun Function. Okay, so what is GraphQL? I personally think of GraphQL as the replacement for REST. With GraphQL, instead of these post, put, and get and stuff, we have a little query language that is slightly more expressive. It allows us to get exactly the data that we want and no more and stuff like that. Mind you, not everyone will agree with me that it will replace REST, but here goes my prediction of the future. GraphQL is going to mostly replace REST. There, I said it, and now people can link to this video in the future and either laugh at me or I will laugh at them. But it doesn't really matter whether or not you think it's going to replace REST or not, it's still a very, very useful tool. Let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a tool called GraphicQL that is running on my local machine. And this is a kind of debugging tool that you can use to explore your GraphQL endpoints. And this is running an express service. It's the express service. It's kind of like where we are going at the end of this video. And what we're seeing here is a query. I think I can run it. Yeah, so this shows you the result of an author. This is a GraphQL endpoint that exposes the GoodReads API. If you don't know about GoodReads, it's basically a social network for book nerds, I guess. But what we're looking at here is a query. So what this query does is that it requests an author with ID 4432. So this is the equivalent of a get in REST. And what we then see here is that we are requesting a name as well. We want the author's name. And that is what we are getting here as well. So you see here that the query here and the result are very similar. They actually are exactly the same, or well, they have exactly the same structure, except that in the result, the actual data is filled in. And if we want to request more data, we can do so by adding, for instance, books here and running it, and it will show books. And as you see here, it automatically filled in two properties here for me: title and ISBN. You might notice here that unlike REST, GraphQL has a schema. So there is actually a type structure here that GraphicQL is aware of and can therefore autocomplete for us. So if I delete this and type I, you see that it will suggest stuff for me. And I can also see here in the right-hand column, I can also navigate and check out the API. So I know what properties, what arguments I can select on when it comes to author, and it shows me here that it is ID that I am supposed to pass in here, and that will return an author, give me an author, and if I click the author, I see what kind of fields that has, and we see here that books is a list of book, which also shows here what kind of titles and what kind of properties it has. It has a title and an ISBN. As you see here, let's see, it was ISBN here, and now the query here includes ISBN. If I delete the title here, I will get just the books with their ISBNs. I can also remove name here. There are a lot of more fancy querying stuffs that you can do, but this is what we are going to focus on in this episode. So what we're looking at here, why is this useful? Why are we just not going straight towards the GoodReads API directly. Let me show you what the author endpoint looks like in the GoodReads API. So what you see here is the payload of the REST API endpoint of author here in the GoodReads API. And as you see, it's it's XML for starters, and it's also very big. So it gives you like a lot of data. So if you can't realistically use this from the client if you want a fast client, because it will like give you all the data. It will even give you all of the author's books as well. So you see here that, wow, there's all the books in here. And this is natural when it comes to REST APIs. Most REST APIs give you a lot of stuff in their endpoints because there is no query language built into REST. It's just, well, we request this resource, we request this author, and there is nothing specified in the REST contract about, well, I want authors with a title and their books with just their ISBNs. That there is no such thing built into the REST protocol or the REST contract or the REST standard. You can build this on top of REST, and some APIs have that. For instance, let's say that you could have some kind of fields equals title here, but all of that would be different from API to API, and you would not be able to reuse any REST tooling from case to case. This is something each endpoint would have to build from scratch, and all consumers would also have to treat every API consumption differently by rebuilding this filtering. Alternatively, you can build a intermediate service between the main service, the GoodReads API, and then you build your own little backend service, perhaps a little Node Express service that feeds the exact information back to the client. You basically create a client-specific backend service. Netflix popularized this actually a couple of years ago, like four years ago, when they published an article talking about their architecture, where they had their core set of services that all things consumed, the place where you got the movies and stuff. They were super generic, but then they also had these aggregation services that picked and chose what sources to pick from, and then they served a very client-specific payload to the respective client. So they had a little service for the, let's say, the Apple TV client, a little service for the Android client, a little service for the Roku client, and one for the web service, depending on what that view needed, what information that needed. What I view GraphQL as is a more generic way of creating these aggregation services. So instead of building this set of services with view-specific delivery mechanisms, you can use GraphQL to build one that is pretty darn decent at delivering exactly the kind of data that each client requests. So in today's video, what we're gonna do is that we're going to turn this into this. That's what we're gonna do. Let's begin by creating a new repository on GitHub. This is now available to you. You can follow along, I guess. And I'm going to call it GraphQL GoodReads. I won't bother giving it a description, and I will add a git ignore for node. MIT something, perhaps. Create repository. Clone or download, clone, copy, copy, copy. And we are going to git clone, paste that in. Cloning, 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 cloning. And cd fff GraphQL GoodReads. Let's open code. All right, first step is to create a basic web server, an express server. I'm gonna do that now. We're gonna create a serve.js, and I'm going to write this now. All right, so let's begin by including express, require express, and first step is to create an app. It's just by us calling express, that gives us an app, and then the app is going to listen to some ports 4000. Oh, I think, and then we just console log listening. Let me bring up the console, create integrated terminal both, and go node serve.js. Cannot find module express. No, that's correct, because we have not pulled in the npm module. So let's first go npm init so that we create a package.json. I'm just gonna hit enter, 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 enter. Yes, whatever. And then we are going to pull in the express module, npm install dash save express. Installing, please stand by. Oh, that was fast. Okay, let's run it again. Node serve.js. Oh, it's listening. Cool. But we have nothing really happening here. So what we're going to do now is that we are going to create a GraphQL endpoint. And to do that, there is a very handy Express extension plugin. I don't know. Either way, it's called require express-graphql. And we are going to call that GraphQL HTTP. I think that's a convention. And before listening, we're going to use it in Express. And we are going to GraphQL. I'm not exactly sure what it is this is doing, but this is how you set it up in Express at least. So let's see. I suppose that this means that we are registering this this extension to this endpoint. Let's see. Pass it GraphicQL true. Let's see if this works in this form. No, it won't, because it cannot find module express GraphQL. Let's include that. npm install dash save express GraphQL. Run it again. Cannot find module GraphQL. Why didn't you install that for me? No, because you are using pure dependencies, which are evil. Either way, it needs that as well. Let us try it again. It's listening, cool. Okay, I wrote GraphQL wrong. So let's see if this works. If I go to that now, what happens? Localhost GraphQL. Okay, GraphQL middleware options must contain a schema, which it doesn't yet. Fair enough. We need to define a schema. Schema. Okay, so where do we get schema from and what is it? So schema is basically the GraphQL thingy. It's the one that contains the types, and it also contains all of the information on how to get at the data. So it's basically where all the magic happens. So we are going to define a schema, and we are going to put that in a file called schema. schema. Let's create that. New. Let me close this console for now. I'm gonna save and I'm gonna schema.js. Now, before we do anything, I would actually like to get the data from the GoodReads API. And to do that, we're gonna use fetch. Fetch is the standard way of getting data on modern browsers. It doesn't exist in Node, but thankfully we have fancy things like modules, so we can just get it with an npm module, and we just require node fetch, and we are going to fetch the endpoint, and I'm going to copy paste this here from our last example, the one I pasted in to the browser earlier. We are going to keep this ID hard-coded here for now. And once with the response, since this is, normally if this was JSON, we would do response.json, but this is XML, so we have to deal with that. And I've intentionally picked an annoying API here, because APIs are quite often very imperfect. You have to do quite a bit of mangling with them, and that is actually a very good use case for GraphQL. It's this neat thing that you put in front of a bunch of dirty APIs, or perhaps not dirty, but perhaps just balkanized. They are just not cohesive. You cannot get all the data that you want in one fell swoop. So you add a GraphQL thing in the middle to aggregate that data for you. Either way, so I think that, let's see what happens here. Const x fetch and x, and I'm going to start Quokka here. Quokka, start on current file. Yes, cool. Okay, we got some stuff here. Yeah, this gives us the XML as a string. Fine. This inline evaluation plugin is called Quokka. It's very handy when you just wanna do a little bit of REPL-based development. I like it a lot. But we don't want, this is hard to deal with as a string. So I would like something that parses this into a, like, it's still going to be the XML structure, but I would like it to be as a JavaScript object. So there is a handy JSON module, npm module for that. It's called require.xml. Hang on, let me minimize this for now. XML2JS. And it has a handy function called parse string that will do exactly what it is I want. Now the problem is that this parse string, it's a very mature tool. It's been around for a while, but as a consequence, it uses callbacks, not promises. So we are going to use a util that was added into Node 1.8, like modern Node. Require blue util, and we're going to call util.promisify, so that this thing returns a promise instead of using callbacks, so that we can use it in our promise chain down here. Let's see, const parse XML. Fantastic, and then we pass that into our parse XML. Cool, this is red. Why is it red? Cannot find module XML2JS. That is perfectly correct. So let's toggle integrated terminal. Nope. And let me pm install -- save XML2JS. All right. See if this starts running. Cool. Parse XML is not defined. No, I typo. Blech. Okay, cool. Now we have an instead we get this handy little object with XML as an object, basically. That is good enough to proceed. Can I turn off Quokka here? Quokka off. Stop. Cool. What we're gonna do is that we are going to do export module exports. We're going to export a new GraphQL schema. GraphQL schema. Bloop. At the root here, we're going to define our query. Query. Hard to type. And that is going to be a GraphQL object type. Bonk. Which in turn, it's going to have a name. We're going to call it query. It's going to have a description. I'm not sure if this is necessary or not. All the examples use it, but let's keep it there for now. And then that thingy is going to have fields. So this all maps to the example we saw earlier. Fields is a function that should return an object. And it's going to have an author. Remember that we're querying authors in the author in the API. And this is going to have an author type. Now, from where does author type come from? We're going to define this in a little bit, but I'm going to proceed a little while longer. This query requires some arguments. One argument to be specific. It requires an ID, and that ID is of type GraphQL int. And perhaps we can actually proceed with defining the author type, actually. Let's do that. This is how you do that. You do const.author type equals new graph. It's another one of these. I'm going to copy it. GraphQL object type. And it's similar to the query. It requires a name. I'm going to call it author. And it's going to have a description as well. And it's also going to have some fields. Scroll down a little bit so that we can see both at the same time. The fields is again a function that returns an object. And the author has a name. You know what? Let's leave that for now and see if we can get this running before proceeding. So we are exporting this schema here. Let me comment out this fetch just for now. And yes, so we are requiring a schema, passing it in. Perhaps this will work. Let's see, toggle integrated terminal. Nope. Let's start the server. Okay, bang, GraphQL object type is not defined. No, I have to actually require these objects, these things in. Let's do that. Const bloop. We're requiring this from GraphQL. GraphQL. So I'm gonna grab that. We also used this thing, GraphQL schema. Sorry, there. And we also had GraphQL int. Okay, let's run that and see if it works. No, it still breaks. Let's see what broke. Author fields must be an object with field names as keys or okay, we need to define some field. So let's do that then. Let's have name, and that needs to have a type. Let me close this to not be distracted. The type is going to be a GraphQL string. And okay, perhaps that's enough. Let's see. And we also need to include this, require it. Let's see, wow. Let's run it again and see what happens. All right. So far, so good. Listening. Okay, so what we're viewing here is the my old prepped example that was pre-written. Now what is serving as at localhost is my actual the actual code that we are looking at. So yeah, can get root. That's correct because we have no endpoint there. But let's go to GraphQL. I think we misspelled it, right? GraphQL. All right, cool. This is actually something it remembers from local storage or cookies or something. This is not actually pulled from the server. Let's just delete this for now. And let's run this and see what happens. Syntax error, GraphQL request, expected name found. Expected name found. What the hell does this mean? Okay, it was because I passed it an empty object, so that just broke. It wants either nothing or this object literal like thing with a property. So now we're actually getting some data here. Like it's not actually giving us any author because we have not given it any way of getting to that data. So let's do that now. Move that away for a bit. Let's fix this typo actually. GraphQL. Okay, let's go back to the schema and see if we can get some data in here. So I'm gonna copy this, our fetch statement, and I'm going to scroll down here to the author. Now, besides type and args, can also provide it with a resolve function. And this is basically the function that the GraphQL will use to fetch or acquire the data for a author. So what we're going to do is it takes a function. The first argument to the function is the any parent data that is passed to it. If it's a nested structure, we don't care about that at the moment. The second argument is the args, I suppose we can call them. It's these things, but with the actual data being passed in. If you remember, like these are the args. So this is what we're gonna get. We're gonna get an ID and we're gonna get this number. So I'm gonna paste in the fetch here, and remember that this is our arguments. So we're gonna change this to a template literal, and we're gonna replace this thing here with args.id. So that now it gets the actual, uses this ID from this ID here. It's gonna put that into the this API here, and it's going to fetch all this data here. I'm not sure exactly where we are. You know what? Let's just run it and see what happens. Let's restart the server. I'm gonna make this window a little bit smaller, and let's jump back to the browser. And let's run that and see what happens. Oh my god, what even? That's all right. It's because I fixed the typo. GraphQL, blam. Run. Okay. Author name null. Well, this makes sense because So what resolve will do is that it's going to fetch all this data, and then it's going to parse the XML as a JSON object, and then it's going to provide that data as like the data meat to the author type that we're loading. So it will load it, but if we look here at the author type, there's this name here that we have. It has no way of knowing how to extract this name from this this XML monster that we have. Remember, like this is what it actually looks like. There's like, where is the name of the author? Well, it's here. We know this, but the code doesn't. So let's fix that. Fix that. Let's fix that. Make this window a little bit smaller. Let me remove that sidebar and have them side by side. So we see here that the first root element here is a GoodReads response. Let's copy that. And name. So name, we need a way here to resolve the name. The resolve function, again, here has the same format. But here, remember here that right now it doesn't get any arguments because there are no arguments going on here. Only arguments going on this level. So here it just gets the name, but it has been passed the data down from this. So in this case, the first argument here is going to be the actual XML that is being returned from the fetch here. So we are going to do XML dot GoodReads response. And then we see here, let me close this request. Under GoodReads response, we have an author. So this is an author property. And this then has these multiple elements. This, if you see here that this is, since this is XML, author might have multiple elements. So we actually need to do it like this when it's converted to JSON. It's a bit funky, but that's the way XML to JSON conversion works. And then there's going to be this name element, and again, name might have might be multiple ones. So we are going to pick the first name field, and I think that's it. Let's see if that worked. Wow, let's run that. Well, looky look. Check this out. Whoa! Author name Jasper Ford. We have him. Let's see. Like just for funsies, let's check out another author just to see that everything works and that I haven't accidentally hard-coded something in. Okay, so let's check out Nassim Taleb. His ID is here. Woof. And let's see. Let's paste that in. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna paste it in here. Boom! Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Excellent. Okay, let's do the same thing for books. So we're gonna add a new field called books, not surprisingly. This type is going to be a GraphQL list. Oh, list. And it's going to be a list of book type. We're going to define that book type up here. Const book type. So this is the same process as author type, really. New GraphQL object type, because I feel like typing it in this time and not copy pasting it. And it's going to have a name and description, but we're going to call it book. And just like the author type, it's going to have fields. Fields. Again, it's a function that returns an object literal. Yeah, but I can't type. I can't type. What is happening to me? I'm having a stroke. All right, there. And the fields. Oh, let's have a look at what books looks like in the XML. Yeah, it has a title here and it has an ISBN. Let's be content with defining those for the moment. It's not name, it's title. And it is of type GraphQL string. And we also have an ISBN, which, well, what is an ISBN? No, an ISBN seems like it's actually a string because it sometimes begins with a 0 and that might be significant. So let's also call this a GraphQL string. Let's run that and see where we are at. So I'm just gonna, no, something broke. GraphQL list is not defined. Okay, yeah, I have not required that yet. So where is the GraphQL list? GraphQL list, I don't want to type it. I don't want to type it. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. And I'm gonna paste it in there. It would have been much faster to just type it. And it breaks again. Let's scroll up here. Cannot call a class as a function. That is probably because I forgot new somewhere. Book type new, probably in the GraphQL. Yeah, I've got new here. New. Node serve.js. Okay, and let's run here. Yeah, but okay, fine, it works. But can we access books? No, cannot yet. Why not? Books. Field type books of type book must have a selection of subfields. Did you mean books? Okay, fine. What if I say title? Books null. Okay, fine. And again, we're in the same situation we were before. We have the schema in the right place, but the schema has no way of knowing how to extract books from the XML monster. So let's have a look at how this fares. There is an XML, under the author, there is a books element. So let's make sure that the books element is passed to, yeah, we want this collection, these here. We want these elements to be passed to each book type as a data. So let's go to the author and the books type. I think we can do this. So we're gonna do this. Resolve. And again, resolve is a function that receives the XML root in this case. And we don't want to pass in the entire thing. We just want to pass in the respective items. Let's do under the author was the books. Books. So this is going to be this element. And I'm a bit unsure how to proceed. Perhaps, I think that this is going to be an array of all the book element. Okay, let's see how this plays out. Let's see what is being passed. Let's create a resolve function somewhere here. Let's resolve title, for instance. Let's resolve. This is a function, and I'm just gonna console log this out. I am XML and see what happens, because I am so uncertain what happens. All right, let's run that and see what is being passed to IamXML. Bam, expected iterable, but did not find one for field author books. Shit, it didn't get this far. There's no console log. Let's scroll down a little bit. Okay, let's extract this and console.log hello to, now hang on, books, we're gonna call it books, and I'm gonna do that, and we're gonna restart and see what happens. Okay, cool, let's see what it logged out. Oh, okay, this is why it doesn't work. So this actually will this logs out an object with a property book with an array of what we want. So XML to JSON conversion is sometimes a little bit mind-boggling because they don't map quite one-to-one. But if I do this, I think it's gonna be all right. Let's restart and see what happens. See if we get further. Cool, we get a little bit further. Let's see what, again, now we're at this console log. Let's resolve on the book. Let's see what we are finding here. So I am XML here, and this is what it looks like. Garble. So do you know what? I'm gonna do this trick. JSON.stringify XML null to, so that it writes out it a bit more, because you see here it collapses things and that just confuses me. So let's get rid of that. Let's try it again. Okay. Okay, let's actually. Okay, here we go. So ISP, what? Okay, ID here. This is weird. What is this? But okay, at least we have titles here. Cool, that's fine, that's good. And perhaps this is some kind of books that he has written that doesn't have ISBNs, and that is, let me scroll up a little bit and see. Yeah, so for some books they have a proper ISBN tag, but some don't. What? That's nasty. Okay, but we can deal with that. So will this work then? xml.name.wap, like that. Let's see. Figure that out. Let's restart the server. See if that cannot read property 0 of undefined. Shite. No, okay, it's because it's not name. Books don't have a name. Books have a title. All right, restart. Yes, cool. Title: The Black Swan. Fooled by Randomness. Both these books are supposedly very good. I'm trying to get through Black Swan. Working on it. It's good. Okay, what if I just do the same thing for 4444 ISBN? xml.xml.isbn and 0. Start the server. Books, ISBN. Okay, so we don't see an ISBN here, but again, I haven't typed ISBN in. We haven't requested it, so let's do that. Added that here. Let's type it. And look at that. We're getting the ISBN. Look now, we can just request just the author with the name if we want. Bam, just get the name, that's nice. Or just books with just the ISBN. That's also nice. I think that this is now mission accomplished. I'm going to commit this. Delete that and then git status. Git add package.lock, package.json, schema.js and serve.js. Damn it. JSON. Git commit. Initial commit. It's not really the initial commit, but git push. Push origin master. And there, you can now check that out yourself if you want to play around with this. However, this is just scratching the surface of what GraphQL can do. What I would like to do next time is to show you some of the lazy data fetching capabilities of GraphQL. Next time we're going to pretend that our API, our GoodReads API, didn't have this, because the author endpoint here includes all of the books that an author has, which is a pretty weird API design. Normally in REST APIs, they are not quite as aggressive in including stuff like this because the payload becomes huge. Normally you have to first request an author and then also request the another endpoint, the books endpoint or something like that, to get the books that this author owns, so to speak. And this is something that you can very easily do in GraphQL, because these resolve methods here, they can return promises. And that is super, super powerful and flexible and really nice to work with. And that is what we're going to be looking at next episode. You have just watched an episode of Fun Function. I release these every Monday morning 0800 GMT. If you are watching from the future, you can watch next week's episode here, right now. If you are not yet in the future, you can check out the Patreon video while you wait. I am MPJ. Until next Monday morning, stay curious.